guys, welcome back to another episode of Chai and Cabins. We just wrapped up an amazing conversation with Cale, who I have been following for a couple of years. I think we started investing at the same time. And he is big in the Smokies market and down in Florida. And what I love about Cale is he took the leap to leave his W-2, his job, and actually breaks that down on the podcast. And he has one property that does over 160K a year, you guys. That is crazy. So you should definitely check out this podcast. Janet, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Just bringing on some new properties. Had a good call with Cale. That was great. I love that he's incorporating more of the like wellness amenities into his properties, which I think is a great niche to really go after. What else? He has the fit investor, so he's really invested in that, the fitness, being financially fit, physically fit, and fit faithfully as well in faith. Yeah, it was a really good time talking with him. He's a good guy.
Where are your new properties that you're onboarding?
They're all in Northwest Arkansas right now. Yeah, we're just hopping around. I know. It's exciting.
I love it. It was a really good call with Cale. I think something we kind of forget in this whole hustle and bustle where we're just like, we want to make more money, how do I make more money? I was realizing how important your health is. It's been a big focus of me this year, especially now that I'm done with all of my travels and I'm here for the summer. I'm like, it's time to focus on me and breathe for a minute. But I think Cale is such a good example of that, but also incorporating that into the Airbnb space by putting saunas and all these cool things that like the modern traveler is looking for.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And he's possibly going to have a mastermind coming out soon. And he talked about doing financial literacy for high school kids, which is awesome. So yeah, it's a really good episode to tune into.
You guys enjoy. I'm so excited to have you here on here, Cale. I've seen you on Facebook a lot. You are like the king of the Smokies. You have all these super cool properties. How did you get started in short-term rentals?
How did I get started? Oh gosh. Well, I guess to take it back to the beginning of the journey was, I had been working about a 15-year career in project management and construction management. And, it was something that it was a great job on paper. I'd lost a passion for it. And it was just, it was stressful. There was a lot of conflict and dealing with different personalities. And it was a difficult and demanding job. And so kind of the coinciding of the birth of my youngest son, the end of 2019 and COVID and all that stuff, just kind of flipped a switch in my head of thinking, I really need to find a way out of here. Like, I don't want to see myself continuing to do this for another 20, 30 years or whatever it's going to be. Like, I need to find something to get me out. And I didn't know how. I just kind of fell back on real estate as an idea, just understanding or thinking that typically people who are wealthy have real estate. So maybe that's a good avenue to look at. And, devoured podcasts, devoured books, started, just kind of networking a little bit. And I actually started out in small multifamily and long-term rentals. And that was kind of what I thought was going to be the path to lead me to the financial freedom. And so that was the first property that I bought, was a small fourplex in a local market. And just quickly realized that it's not going to get me, where I wanted to be in the time frame I wanted to get. And so did a bit of shiny object syndrome for about 6 months or so, and then happened to really stumble across short-term rentals on a podcast. They were talking about short-term rentals, and they were talking about the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, and it all sounded great. It all checked all the boxes. The numbers sounded amazing. And so I didn't even know where it was. After the podcast, I literally Google mapped it. It was a long drive, but drivable, and packed up a minivan a few days later, drove 17 hours out there and scoped it out, met with realtors, and 3-4 weeks later, we're under contract on the first one. And that's kind of how it all got started.
I love it. That's exactly how I feel about the Smoky Mountains. I heard someone on a podcast and I think they mentioned Pigeon Forge. And I was like literally in my car typing out Pigeon Forge. I was like, there's no way. And yeah, that's how exactly how we found out. And we didn't even fly out to it until we got a property under contract.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yep. So yeah, and then it was off to the races. We got that first one, and I like to think by God's providence, we found out that the seller on that first property owned the two next door ones, and they wanted to sell those as well. And so after closing on the first one, we immediately negotiated with them off market and went under contract and bought the other two. So we went from 0 to 3 in like 3 months.
Year was this?
That was very beginning of 2021.
And were you just deploying personal capital to buy these and getting loans?
Yes. So, yeah, I used some savings. I used HELOC. I used a 401k loan. And through the CARES Act during COVID, I pulled out money from IRAs as well, penalty free. So yeah, I was tapping into everything.
You went all in, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So,
Alright.
I mean, I had the W-2, so I had a little bit of a safety net, and so I think that certainly helped with giving a bit of a comfort level. But yeah, it was a risk. I mean, writing, especially that first property, writing the biggest check I've ever written in my life.
I'm closing on a hotel on Monday, and I feel the same way all over. I was doing good on short-term rentals, and now the hotel, like the closing documents came in today, and I was like, okay, calm down.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that first one is scary.
I think we're used to it. That's how you level up, right?
Right, exactly.
How were the first 3 months? Because did you have to do any rehabs on these properties? Were they like ready to go? Were you like, and you were still learning self-management, right?
Right. Yeah, I was very fresh and new to it. So no, there was no major renovation or anything. That first one we did convert a garage into some additional sleeping space and a theater. But that was relatively minor renovation. The others, yeah, I mean, they were pretty much quote unquote turnkey. I mean, we tried, and especially at that time, we were trying to spend as little as we could to get them up and running. So, we kind of went in, updated the major things like electronics and smart equipment and stuff like that. And, tried to keep as much of the furniture and stuff like that, even if it was a little outdated as we could, and just get them up and running. And, this was 2021 and 2022, where, I mean, in all honesty, it was certainly a lot easier than it is now. I mean, you really could kind of just take anything and throw it up there and still do pretty well.
I believe it. And then since then, I know I've seen your recent Facebook post where you've gone in and you've upgraded a lot of your properties. You've gotten them really nice. What's that been like? Because I agree, like 21, 22, I could coast along. And like, I don't
Right.
have to look at pricing that closely. I could chill out. But this year, like we're all hands on board.
Right.
It
Yeah.
feels like a real business now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, the general sentiment across the board and the industry. I mean, it's definitely work at this point. And I think that's where a lot of the perhaps like rumor mill or whatever you want to call it about, the Airbnb bust and all this stuff kind of stems from, is that I think there's a lot of people who got involved around the same time, as myself and a lot of others during COVID, when things were pretty darn easy. And now that they're not, a lot of people maybe aren't prepared for that or aren't willing to put in the work to actually do it and do it well in order to perform. And so I think that's where a lot of this kind of negative media and rumor comes from. People that maybe just aren't prepared for the reality of it, and or they purchased improperly and are now feeling the effects of that. But I always tell people, if you're willing to put in the work, you buy right, you manage right, and you run it like a business, you're going to do well. And I just think one of the bigger shifts in the industry is that you really have to, especially in competitive markets, you really have to start providing experiences and not just places to stay, right? Because the places to stay now are a dime a dozen. And if you're in that level, you can still do well. It's just you're going to be in a much bigger, competitive set versus if you can provide something extra and special and out of the box that demands a premium. that's going to set you apart and really allow you to outperform.
Do you have any examples of how people can host a special experience? Like, what does that mean? Or have you done anything to like a property where you're like, this was regular in 21, 22, here's what I did in 23, 24?
Yeah, so I mean, kind of one of the things that we're doing now is, and we started with it as a kind of a proof of concept with a property down here in Florida, towards the end of last year. And that, the whole kind of wellness and biohacking trend is pretty popular nowadays. And so we had this property here in Florida that, the house itself was just okay. It was, it's a nice house, but nothing crazy. And the location was just okay. But it had this great big outdoor or backyard and outdoor space, which is not necessarily typical in that area. So just this really nice big outdoor space. And so we said, look, let's make this the selling point. Like the house, whatever, the house is a dime a dozen. Let's make this outdoor space special and unique and the selling point of this property. And so we designed it as like a mini like private resort. So, we put in a barrel sauna, we put in a cold plunge, a stock tank or cowboy pool, tiki bar, outdoor theater, converted the garage into a game room, and just made it this really cool spot. And so like when you walk through the gate into the backyard, you're in your own like private oasis. And that property has been absolutely crushing it. I mean, just from the day that we launched, it's been 95% occupancy straight through. I mean, doubling AirDNA projections, just absolutely crushing it. And we even get a lot of locals that book with us because it's that cool. Like they're not coming to this area. They're not booking that place because they're coming to this area. They're booking that place because they want to go there because, hey, that's a cool place to stay. Right. And so that's kind of the next level in setting it apart.
Love it. How much did that cost?
That particular one, so to do all that we did outside and decorate and everything inside the house, which was a 3-bedroom house, I think that was around like 75,000. But just for example, I mean, AirDNA revenue estimates on that place were 80,000. I mean, it's on track to do 160 plus.
Holy, so you're like less than your ROI on that.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that's like the power of understanding your customer.
Yeah, and yeah, I was just thinking outside the box and taking a bit of a risk. I mean, and it's funny, like when we first started posting about that, we got a lot of people that said, why are you putting a sauna outside in South Florida? It's 100 degrees out there, right? But people love it. I love it. Shoot, it's great. I mean, it's awesome.
And people are like, who uses a hot tub in Texas? I'm like, ask my July guests will be like, it's not hot enough in the hot tub.
Right? Yeah, you'd be surprised. Right? So, that was kind of the proof of concept. And since we saw how well that was doing, we replicated that in another property down here in Florida. And then most recently, decided to take another risk and do it in a property in the Smokies. So that's where we built out a 1,200 square foot basement, added a couple more bedrooms and bathroom, a gym area, a theater, a poker room, and then an indoor spa room where same thing. We have a nice big 4-person sauna, a steam shower, a cold plunge, massage chair, massage table. I mean, mood lighting. I mean, it's a cool space,
I'm gonna stay there now. That sounds awesome.
I
Do you
know.
think this will be kind of your niche now where you're gonna build out the rest of those to incorporate all of those things or some of those things to make it for that specific guest?
I would like to, if this one in Tennessee that one just wrapped up and kind of launched, about a month ago. So still very early to see how that's going to perform. So far, it seems like it's being well received. So if that as a proof of concept proves to be, good in that market as well, then yeah, I think we'll be looking to replicate similar things across those properties. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just going to be a continual evolution, right? We're going to have to continually try to see what people are looking for, what's a little bit different, that our competitors are not offering. And, take a little bit of risk and see if it pays off.
I love it. How was your journey? Because a lot of people got into this space in like 2020, 2021, including that was when I got into the space. And people bought one or two cabins and then they still stayed with like their W-2, which is awesome, like if that's what people are looking for. But you made the jump, like you actually quit your W-2 at some point and then went really all in on real estate. What was
Right.
that journey like? Because so many people want to take that leap
Yeah.
you're just scared, which is completely true. Like, I mean, I'd be terrified.
Yeah, it is. It is scary. Absolutely. I stayed with the W-2 for about 2 years from that very beginning of when I got in, started with the short-term rentals. And it was definitely beneficial for me doing that and the ability to scale as quickly as I did. So, I always tell people now, like, if you have a job that at least you can tolerate, like, I mean, if it's of course like super toxic and like you need to get out, then, maybe you need to do something quicker. But if you can at least tolerate it for a while, do it for, as long as you can, at least to get to a comfort level, with your scale and with your cash flow, that it makes the leap a little bit easier. Right. And so that's what I did. I mean, I had actually replaced the income from that job within, I think it was less than 9 months. But I continued to stay on for another year plus after that. And you know it was difficult, and honestly, like, I'm the kind of person where sometimes I need somebody to give me the kick in the butt to make a big decision like that, than be able to rip the band-aid off myself. And so it kind of, it kind of happened on its own, uh which I'm happy for, actually, because when we kind of did have that discussion with my boss, because people kind of knew that I was doing some stuff with real estate. I tried not to talk about it a lot because whatever, I don't want to raise red flags prematurely and that type of thing. But since I was scaling, I was doing a lot of podcasts and stuff like that. And so, it was kind of out there for people to find if they were looking for it. But I tried to keep it as separate as I could from the work life. But some people kind of caught wind of it, and they weren't really happy about it. And so we ended up having a discussion and decided that, it was probably the time to, make the step.
Really?
And
So they told you
yeah.
that, like, they gave you like an offer to exit, basically?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it wasn't necessarily, an ultimatum. It was kind of like, we know what you're doing. We know that you're not planning on being around. So what are we going to do about this? Nobody, we're not too thrilled on this. So maybe now is the time that you want to start thinking about it. And so, yeah, we came up with an exit plan, over a few month period to transition, them out of that, and me out of it and everything, and make it work out. So, at the time it was a little bit like, okay, that's kind of odd, but looking back now, I'm like, yeah, that's good, and I was at peace with the decision. Like, when they brought that up, I was like, all right, I'm ready. So
One of my mentors recently told me, he's like, universe or God will support you in every stage of your growth. He's like, have faith that you'll be okay. And
right.
like it's like what you said right there. Like it's a really hard like jumps to do, right? And like even like now going from SDRs to hotels is mentally like a strong jump. And I'm just like, I'm supported. We'll be okay. And when we get through this.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that was the other thing too, in that, when I started this journey out, I was, I put this all up to prayer, and I wanted to, as best as I could, try to make sure this was, aligned with God's will and God's plan. And again, when that situation came up with the job, like, it was just again, I just kind of, I felt at peace. And that's what to me was a sign that, yeah, this is the time to leave.
How did it feel once you were like, I'm out? Like, did that like fast pace your growth even more? Where you're like, now I can really go all in?
No, because I mean, I was already all in. I mean, those 2 years, I mean, I was busting my hump. I had scaled a lot. I mean, it was, yeah, it was a busy 2 years. So I was already pretty much all in, and kind of checked out mentally from that job already. And so it was, it was just kind of, it's been a learning experience, I'll say, for the past year and a half of just, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur, be your own boss, uh, which is sometimes a better or worse situation, right? And just try to figure out how do you actually build a business and, turn this into something that doesn't become just a whole nother job for you. Right. And so that's kind of the phase that I'm in now. And I know we were chatting before, about the BAs and things like that. So, that's the stage that I'm at now, and trying to transition myself now out of the wearing all the wearing all the hats, and start building the team to, take me out of the day to day and be able to focus on the bigger picture of things again. So I will say it's definitely been a learning experience. It is challenging being an entrepreneur, and being responsible for everything. So I will say it's not for the faint of heart. I think you do have to have a certain personality to be able to handle it. But once you do kind of make that transition, maybe one of the best pieces of advice is, network, and more so than ever, just start surrounding yourself in that community of the people who are doing those things, because you're going to need kind of that mental support, if nothing else.
Agreed. Now, do you have your own portfolio? I know obviously you have your own, but do you manage for anyone else? Do you co-host? Do you have property management, or is it all your own portfolio?
It's primarily ours, but we did start co-hosting towards the end of last year. And so that is something that we are going to, as we build our team internally, that's something that we're going to start focusing more on expanding as well.
And how many properties do you have?
So total, between ours and co-hosting, we have 13, and we're about to onboard one more co-hosting one here shortly as well.
Awesome. And do you co-host in Florida or in the Smokies?
Both. Yep.
How's the co-hosting world been for you?
Great. It's all come organically. So I really wasn't planning on co-hosting. And so the first one was just had a friend from church who, he has his own business and he has real estate as well. And we had kind of had discussions on it, and he happened to have a property that suited itself very well. So we started talking about it. And so that was the first one that I started with. And then, from there, it's just been through my network, people reaching out to me and referrals. So that's saying we haven't marketed it at all, or pushed it at all. But again, once we kind of build the team up, that is going to be a focus of ours, to start broadcasting it a bit more.
When did you decide you probably needed to start hiring some help?
When did I realized I knew I needed to hire help a long time ago. Unfortunately, I am stubborn and very do-it-yourself and cheap. And so I put it off as much as possible. But I've known in the back of my head for a long time that if you want to really take this to the next level, if you want to grow, if you want to not make this a job, you need to whatever, take the financial hit, for the period, and just do it. And so finally it was just kind of like, what, like I can still do all this myself, but I really just don't want to anymore. I think it was just kind of approaching that burnout phase.
How big is your team now?
Still just me. So I'm on the hunt for the first set of VAs right now. So we had a couple stops and starts with some VAs a couple months ago that didn't work out. And so we're kind of back to the drawing board and interviewing and stuff at this moment. But hopefully very soon it will be more than just me.
You need any help, I'm happy to help. I hired my first VA at my 6th unit, but I had let go or they had quit. I like to say I let go, I'm sure they quit. I had probably around 8 VAs at that point. Like I was just burning through people like this.
Yeah.
To the standard, man. But what I ended up realizing was I wasn't up to my own standard. So I blame them, but also really blame me. Since then I've gotten on the whole like 100%. It's on me. Like own it. And it was on me. But the universe did send me someone who has worked out phenomenally since then. But I see like her traits and I see like where I was going wrong with the other VAs in my training. So if you need any help, like I'm a resource. And for anyone that's listening to the podcast, if you guys are struggling to hire your first VA, I'm actually doing a talk next week in Austin about how to hire your first VA and how to build out a team.
There you go.
Yeah, so if you need any help, like I'm happy to share any resources, how we track hours, how we pay, how we do the whole thing, how we track, or how we talk, all of it. It's a huge learning curve, and your first 3 months are going to be pretty rough. So hang in there.
I very well may reach out to you after this.
It gets better. I think everybody has this whole thing in their head where they're like, I'm going to hire my first VA and I can just like log out of Airbnb and they'll take care of everything. Like the expectations are here, and the VA is like here, and the worst part is you're here. So it's like these 3 things that are floating around, and people are like, this was supposed to be like easy. I'm like, it will. Just the first 3 months are gonna suck. So putting in the right like systems in place. I'm actually training an ops manager for the hotels we manage right now. And it's like back to the drawing board. Like I'm literally like sitting there sending LastPass logins. I need to have a better system for this. Like, why am I sending out LastPass logins to people?
Right. Yeah.
But it is rough, like the first. So just breathe through it. You'll be
all
fine.
right. I'm gonna buckle up.
It will be good. And like anyone you hire is gonna work. Like it's gonna be fine, because what has to change is you and your systems and your processes. We're at the point now where if someone quits, we can bring someone in pretty much, because like everything's in an SOP.
Right.
And that makes it a lot easier. The other thing I will tell you is do not start writing out your SOPs. Everyone like writes out these SOPs and then hires a VA. I tell people hire the VA, teach them, and then have them write out the SOP and then verify it and then classify it, so they understand why you did it. You understand, because when I write something, I write it for me. I don't write it for people. And especially if you want to have a VA team where like your lead VA is going to train your next set of VAs and then the next one, you want to make sure they understand.
Right. That's good advice. Yeah.
Any help you need.
She's the queen. She's the VA queen.
The VA queen.
I burned through a lot of them. So there's that. And then I got my shit together basically. I just got burnt out, man. I was like, I can't live like this.
Yeah.
I want to be there for my husband. Like I want to be there for my family. I don't want to tell people where their Wi-Fi password is.
Yeah.
I just got over it like so fast. And I had a Christmas that got pretty ruined because of it. And I was like, I will never.
Right. And that's I think kind of like where you start getting, kind of pushed over the edge is, because it when you're doing it all yourself, as you guys know, you're almost, to some extent, you're always on call. Right. And so, if you go on a vacation, you're not really on vacation. Right. And, I remember there was, it's like a couple months ago or whatever, there was a situation where, it was like 8:30 or 8:30 at night. And like, I'm trying to give my 4-year-old a bath. And I've got, this one guest who's just being a jerk, and then issues on another property. I'm trying to like message them in between washing him. And I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like something needs to change here. So I think that's probably where the genesis of starting to say, okay, you need to do something here.
I just started getting anxiety around Friday nights. Like that was like, because we're weekend heavy markets.
Right.
Every time like the phone would go off on Friday, I would just like, this is a problem. The AC is gonna go out, like all of this. And I own a restaurant. Like, so I'm used to Friday stress. And like I was stressing out while I was wrapping falafels in my restaurant. And I was like, ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it does. I mean, like in the first year, honestly, it was a lot of anxiety. Like in the mornings, like I like almost I dreaded checking my phone in the morning. So I was like, oh my gosh, like what if there was an issue overnight? Like what if something happened? Like what if somebody's angry? And so there was like, yeah, anxiety like every single morning. I was like, oh my goodness. And I eventually said, you know, I just kind of said, I don't care. Like if something happens during the time that I'm sleeping, if it's an emergency, like I hope they're smart enough to call 911. If it's not that serious, I'll be able to deal with it in the morning. Right.
Mhm.
And so I kind of just made it a point that like after 8:30, typically I won't check the phone until like 7:30, 8 a.m. the next morning, so I'll do my morning routines and all that stuff before even looking at any messages because I don't want to get stressed
Mhm.
out. I'll start handling it when I'm good and ready.
I think the other thing is there's this chart that kind of shows you like, you're like chugging along, you're doing good, and then you hire the first VA and like you're because like your money goes down, your time goes down, because like you're putting all this time, you're putting all this money, and it takes like 3 months to get everybody like settled, and then you start on this trajectory again, and then you hire the second VA, and then the dip happens again. But then like that is the only way to grow out of this business.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's an evolution of learning again how to run and how to grow a business. I by no means ever thought I would be an entrepreneur or have a business. I don't necessarily consider myself very entrepreneurial by nature. So yeah, it's a learning experience and a learning curve. Yeah.
Love it. What's next for you apart from the VA?
Yeah, I'm still very bullish on the short-term rentals. I'm actually kind of in acquisition mode again right now, starting to submit some offers. So I'd like to perhaps get another couple, perhaps 1 to 2 short-term rentals, of purchasing, and then expand the co-hosting a bit, for the revenue. And then from there, I actually like to make a transition as far as future acquisitions into the commercial space. So I haven't quite narrowed down exactly what asset class I'd like to get into, but I kind of know I want to move into that and start getting into some bigger and better things with the ability to force some equity. And so I think that's where it's going to lead. I have some kind of pet projects on the side as well that I've been, trying to develop a little bit too, but just not having the bandwidth. So again, once kind of I build that team up a little bit and can start focusing on some things, of course I have the Fit Investor podcast and community, which I'd like to kind of, put some more into that. Yeah, I'd started doing a financial literacy course for high school students. That's something that was really enjoyable that I'd like to be able to kind of expand that a bit. So yeah, there's some kind of various pet projects that I'd like to start building up a little bit more as well.
Are you looking in the same markets you're already in for your STRs?
Yeah, still primarily Tennessee. There are a couple other markets that have my interest that I keep my eye on, but the low hanging fruit, so to speak, is the markets that I'm in. So that's what I'm pursuing most heavily.
I love it. Tell me a little bit more about the financial literacy for high school kids. Is that like a course that you teach at a high school locally?
That well, so it started out with so I'm involved in my the high school youth group at my church. And so that's kind of where we started it out in that yeah, I developed it was a 6-week course that started out with, I mean, we started out with the basics and going over, what is money, what is real money, what is fake money, talking about the central banking system, talking about inflation, and then teaching them about investing, teaching about real estate, entrepreneurship, businesses. And so it was really just kind of like a passion project that, again, I kind of had in my head for a while, but never did anything with it until I kind of got a little kick in the butt. And so decided to pilot it with the high school youth group, and it was a hit. I mean, they loved it. I loved it. It was so much fun. And so, it's something that I'd like to be able to, expand locally here, but turn it into actually something that can be, taught by, an actual course that can be taught by other people, and something that can be expanded. So that's kind of the ultimate goal with it. It was just cool. It was, even after the first day when I was kind of hitting him with all like the real truths, and I follow Robert Kiyosaki and his philosophy a lot on things, and just hitting with the truths about, again, the central bank and real money, fake money. It was just like seeing all the light bulbs go off in their head, and like their constant comment was like, why are we not being taught these things? Like, why is nobody telling us this? And it's just, there is such a need for that. I mean, it's just, gosh, it drives me nuts. I wish I had known this stuff earlier,
Oh my gosh. I remember reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I was like, hey, like, why does no one talk about this? That got me started in like entrepreneurship. That was
Yeah.
years, but like, we teach kids algebra, but we can't teach them like how to write a check or make sure there's how to take out a HELOC. Like, I'm not watching YouTube videos to understand how to do a HELOC like years ago. And I was like, why wasn't I taught this? It's actually like useful information.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. If nothing else, like even, forget even investing and things like that, but if they're just taught and can understand how money works, that alone is going to set you up on the right path for a prosperous future. I mean, if you can just understand how money works, the rest goes along with it. Most people don't, though. Most people have no clue how money works.
So I haven't read the book, The Psychology of Money, but I was watching like a 15-minute The Swedish investor video on the psychology of money. And he was like, it's not even about how much money you make, but it's your behavior with money and
Right.
understanding compound interest. So you could
Right.
have a great job and just continuously investing and letting compound interest do its thing. Like, you'll be very rich at 60. Like, you'll be totally.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, there's just such a need for it, such a need for that education. And of course, we kind of centered it around as well, how to manage money, in line with, with God as well. And so, because that's another big misconception, I think, in the Christian community, is that it's really frowned upon to some extent to be successful or to be wealthy, and be a Christian. And so trying to dispel some of those myths as well. So we tried to, go over that in the coursework as well, and, talk about, hey, what does the Bible really say about, about money, about riches, about wealth, and how to steward it properly. So that was really one of the big focuses as well.
And then you said you are looking to start a community. I know you have your podcast. Are you thinking about mastermind? Do you do consulting, coaching, any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So we actually did start coaching and consulting towards the end of last year as well. And that's something that we also want to look to expand, and we're about to launch a group coaching program, because we've been doing one-on-one, but we're trying to transition and move that into a group thing. So we're about to launch that, which should be good. But yeah, so we're starting to do that. And yeah, as far as masterminds and stuff like that, that's also something that I'd like to start doing as part of the, the Fit Investor branding and community as well. Still trying to bring together those three things, right? Which our tagline is the, finances, physical fitness, and faith. So, I'd love to do some type of, mastermind retreats where we can, mission oriented or service oriented, where, probably, I've kind of had some initial thoughts, but probably overseas, where, maybe it's 4 or 5 days, where, during the daytime, it's going to be all service oriented. It's going to be, mission work. And then in the evening, we'll have kind of the mastermind sessions and, health and wellness sessions and that type of thing. So that's what I'd really love to get it to.
Love it. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Facebook's probably the best way. You can find me just Cale Delaney. Instagram as well, same thing, Cale Delaney. And yeah, you can look us up on Fit Investor on YouTube and all that stuff. But yeah, Facebook's probably the easiest way.
This was awesome. Thanks so much for chatting with us today, Cale.
No problem. Thank you,
thanks.
ladies, for having me.
Thank you.